fearless, curious soul. Goldilocks Productions presents The Deep Reading, connecting you to your soul show.
This is Suzanne Wyman, the Deep Psychic. Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. Please think about the commentary that you're listening to today and that you relate to. I want you to feel included and know that if this conversation resonates to who and what you are, then you are part of something greater than yourself. The universe is connecting to you and answering your questions. So here we are on Thursday afternoon. It's 12 noon here in Dana Point, California. And I want you to know that if you're listening today and you'd like to call in, I'm going to see if I can do a few call-in guests. The number to call in is 206-806-9965. You can call me and talk to me personally and leave me a message at 714-400-7384. The idea is that through a process of empowerment, I connect you to the very deepest part of your soul. It is not a shallow, superficial reading. It is a very, very deep reading that takes you to a different place, moving you past your limiting past beliefs and putting you into a position to understand what truly motivates you and why some of the patterns keep reemerging in your life. So let's see if my daughter would like to come on and share some of her great insights about astrology and what's going on. Catherine, is that you?
Yep.
How are you today, Catherine?
I'm good. How are you?
Really good. So is today the first day of Mercury retrograde or the second day?
The first day.
It is. Oh, okay.
And were you feeling it this morning?
No, because I had no expectations of myself. I didn't expect myself to do much of anything today, so, I let everything wait until the last moment. That's what I did. That's how I just said, well, what happens, happens. How about you? I mean, you work in the law field, so everything is about being on time. Everything is black and white.
We always have to watch our communications during Mercury retrograde with emails. Stuff's so easily misconstrued in emails, and that's a majority of our communication. So just going back and clarifying those, but I know those around me are experiencing their appliances falling apart, and, when it rains, it pours. So, just, but if so I think there's an ease to it if you kind of know, oh, this is Mercury retrograde and, it'll end soon. But, there's a lot. I mean, I'm just reviewing all of my stuff that's going on in June, and it is just so much, and we haven't had a chance to cover it on the podcast, but it's a lot of energy that we are experiencing this month, and it's really interesting to tie it back to the events that we're seeing on a global scale.
Let's do it.
So
let's do it. Can you? I don't know if your phone is in position right, but your voice sounds just a little bit down. It's a little bit soft.
Is that any better?
Ah, that's much better. Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay. It's all about the position of those headphones, right?
Okay. So go through the astrological aspects that we're currently experiencing. We've just stepped into Mercury retrograde, and I felt the wobble for 2 days before.
Yeah. So it's I actually want to go back to June 3rd because we've been talking about all those planets in retrograde, and so Venus, we had the rebirth of Venus back on June 3rd. So, and it's an important part of the retrograde cycle. And it was kind of interesting because that was the time frame where a lot of places were enforcing curfews and things related to the protests. So, but it's supposed to signify a time of healing. The themes are love, forgiveness, communication. So I think we're seeing that on a big scale right now. And then June 5th was the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius.
Wow.
So this is supposed to bring a massive shift around spirituality, higher education, freedom, travel, and so issues on these topics kind of change the way we see the world, right? And so a lot of, so looking back, that was when federal law enforcement were kind of dispatched through the protests. And but it was interesting, I looked and I saw, Sagittarius wants the truth. So if something's hidden, revelations in this time frame can really change how the world stage is presented going forward.
So Sagittarius is ruled by, I never can remember this, but I always think of Sagittarius as the centaur. And so the centaur is about taking who and what at the physical level, the animal nature of humanity, and crossing over into the spiritual side, the higher evolution of mankind. And the king of the centaurs, Chiron, he brought us poetry, music, war, and healing. All those things seem contradictory, but to dream of a centaur is to dream of a hero's journey.
Oh, okay. I like that. So Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter.
Wow. That is really heavy then. That really gets into some heavy material because it's not healing like healing. It's healing the actual problem and then eliminating the problem that's preventing the healing. So it's setting a stage for these things to turn and evolve.
Yeah, so kind of removing the obstacles, it's supposed to be about stepping into our power. We're reminded that we're more powerful and knowing than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
And I think we have seen that, there's a great power to communities, sharing their voice on these issues. And we are seeing a lot of change happen very quickly because, people are listening.
Good.
So,
it is interesting. I always say that anger is unexpressed love, and rage is to protect you. So, two processes that are often thought of as one process, but have very, very different application of understanding them and using them effectively. So, so love that isn't expressed becomes anger, resentment, and self-justification, whereas rage, you feel rage. I assure you, in some way or another, you feel like you're in danger.
So it's like a emotional form of self-preservation.
Yes. So, a person who's fragile and has no sense of self and has a big ego, they're going to fall into rage a lot, and that's not productive rage. That's just somebody who becomes a rageaholic and enjoys all the hormones that are released from raging. And that's not a productive process. There's a difference.
Yeah, there's a lot with our brain chemistry and emotions and things that our body does automatically to protect us or, engage those flight or fight, just automatic life responses. So it's, but it's also interesting to see how we can, get addicted to those emotional chemicals the same way, people get addicted to substances.
Right. So you went through the first pieces of June and what's going on. So our focus is about allowing love to be born and really, really working on the deeper causes of creating a greater healing and a more powerful change in the world. The biggest difference that we're seeing today, of course, is that something that happens locally becomes something that happens worldwide. And so there is no more separation within our societies and our cultures. There's just the media and how we connect with one another.
Yeah, so we kind of carry that energy into this retrograde because we're in between those eclipses. So we had, the lunar eclipse on the 5th, and then we have a solar eclipse on the 20th. So Mercury retrograde starts in that eclipse bridge. So there's just a lot of intensity. But Mercury retrograde starts today and goes until July 12th.
Wow.
It's in Cancer. So it's going to be, we're going to be really sensitive emotionally. So Mercury is about communication, right? And so communication is going to have a big impact in, words that are harsh, or maybe they don't necessarily have malintent, but we take them, offensively, are going to be felt a little more deeper. And then those kind words are going to be felt with intense love. So it's really about how our communication affects our emotions.
Wow. Well, I have to say, I've seen so many people die in a really short period of time in my own personal life. I know that that's not me as an isolated individual. I think that I'm experiencing what other people are experiencing. I mean, there's just a lot of people that have decided that, they've done their time here on the planet and they're ready to move on to the spirit world. And it's a tough thing to watch. It really is. So the theme for the call-in today is talking about grief. And so talk about the planetary aspects that are going on around grief, because you said an unkind word is taken internally in a wounding fashion, and kind words are taken with a lot of love. So there could be a distortion on either one of those processes very easily.
Yeah. I think June is just an intense month energetically. So if you're going through a process of grieving, and with grief, we experience so many different stages of emotion, right? There's the 5 stages of grief that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talks about. I think one of her students adds on a sixth stage, but and then we experience them not always in that order that she lays them out, right? We go through all of those things. So I think the thing to keep in mind, especially while we're in this Mercury retrograde, and especially if you're feeling grief, is that there's no shoulds to emotions, right? It's all your emotions are valid, and we're allowed to experience them and go through those stages. It's going to feel more intense right now. So I think, just the caveat being that when communication is happening, to just be aware of how it's making you feel, and maybe being aware that might be distorted. Might be a distorted communication in how you've interpreted it.
Okay,
so
let's talk about how people generally view retrograde, and what are the things that we say you have an opportunity to delay or wait until this retrograde passes. Let's talk about signing contracts, making agreements, buying electrical appliances. Let's talk about the more day-to-day practical things that happen during retrograde that we've been taught, this isn't the time. This is time to think about it, talk about it, but not to do it.
Right. So, just expect that you're going to need more time for travel. You're going to need, just expect technical glitches, expect, maybe something, maybe time to get your car looked at, things like that. I like Teresa Reed has a golden rule for retrograde, and it's add R-E, before everything. So redo, rethink, repair, and relax. So, yeah, it's not a time to start new things. I've talked about it, always as kind of a spring cleaning. Go back, clear out that stuff you've been meaning to do that's already started, but not starting new things. And just kind of expecting that things might go awry, and I find that if you're prepared for things not going perfectly, then you kind of lower the bar on your expectations, so you're not as upset or disappointed when they don't go right.
It's true. That's really true. What about the part about signing a contract or buying a new refrigerator or anything like that?
You can do it. It's not like a forbidden. It's just, we say that if you do it, you might have to do it 3 times over, right? So you might have to go back and do one piece of it again, or so it's just, I say if you can wait on those things, then wait. If you have to do it, make sure that you are giving it ample attention and time to thoroughly vet any warranties. Just take your time with it and go back, and especially with, communication with others, just participating in that active listening, and don't be afraid to ask questions, right? Like, this is also going to be a time where we find our voice. So, a lot of times I think we get intimidated by authority. So it's like, someone tells you something, and it's like, it's a time to go back and just ask them, right? Just go. I mean, I don't know. That's my interpretation. What's your thought on that?
I think during retrograde, you just have to be really accepting of the fact that people aren't necessarily going to understand what you're about and what you're doing. And it's no time for you to try and, fix that understanding. I mean, it's just a cycle that goes on. And so my theory on it is to give people space. But I also won't sign a contract or buy an electrical appliance or be surprised by showing up at the store and their system's down. I mean, it's kind of like, to me, it's like, well, it's the process of communication in some way or another stalls, and we never know exactly how the retrograde is going to play out. This retrograde relates to home, and people that value home are going to feel it more deeply, so it's different. It's always different each time. I mean, one time during retrograde, stuff got lost. I mean, I couldn't find anything. Stuff that I expected to show up was lost. It got, it was supposed to arrive. It didn't arrive. So each retrograde kind of has its own little specific sort of spot to it. And the last retrograde we had was in January. Is that right?
I think so. I always notice a lot of car accidents around retrograde.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Take your time.
Our last retrograde was in February.
Okay, what were the dates on that one?
The 16th through March 10th.
Yeah, And then
I think it was in Pisces.
And I thought that was part of the reason why the problems with the pandemic, got so serious. Because of that gap in there, the lack of communication and the lack of clear communication. But it's more of a private opinion than anything else. It's not based on anything else I can really relate it to. So, okay. So you said there's several energetic things happening in June. There's the eclipse, and then there's this retrograde. What else? Excuse me.
So there's a new moon solar eclipse in Cancer on the 20th, and it happens 0 degrees Cancer while we also move into summer solstice.
Ooh, that should be really powerful. What's the great benefit of that? I can see some of the problems, but what's the benefit of it?
So I guess the benefit of something being at 0 degrees is that it's a point of infinite possibilities.
Okay.
And then, and I guess because, so I was reading that, I never heard of this, a global axis, but I guess 0 degrees Cancer is a global axis, so it's a really highly charged point.
Yeah.
So, but I've never heard of a global axis. I guess it's an opening of a new timeline, a new world, a new dimension.
Right. It's very rare that it occurs. I'm trying to think of another time when one happened, but there's people that go to specific positive vortexes so they can feel it, and they get energized from it. I mean, some people have that luxury of being able to go into that place and look at the timing of it and say, okay, this is when it hits this particular spot, and then they have an experience with it. But, obviously that's a great point, because the whole idea of what home represents has shifted during this chapter, because through our computer and our telephone, we're truly connected to one another. There no longer is any sort of separation. Even inside of your home, there really isn't. You're not separated from the rest of humanity. So apparently that piece of understanding shifts into the human consciousness.
Yeah. I think it's just showing us like we've already kind of created this new world, this new normal, and so it kind of seems like this, eclipse is like, we've kind of burned everything away that's no longer needed, and, it's giving us that opportunity to step forward into the new journey.
Okay, perfect. So, is there any other astrological aspect going on in June? Those are great ones. That's great.
June 22nd, we have our 6th planet in retrograde. Neptune goes retrograde in Pisces.
Oh no! That's so funny. Boy, talk about people's emotions going into this strange sort of undercurrent of not really understanding of how their emotions really focus their responses to the world and how they live their life. Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, so we get a double whammy with that piece, because if you have negative emotions about something, you're not going to be able to manifest anything while that retrograde goes on. How long does that one last? Neptune is a large planetary process, so how long does that last?
I don't have that in front of me, but
okay.
We can talk about it next week on the dates and what that retrograde brings. So, but I guess it's supposed to be like a reality check, so we can't ignore those truths. It kind of brings answers to some confusing information. So we'll be able to see what's real, what's false. The thing of Neptune finally sunk in for me as the planet of illusions when I understood the myth of the waves looking like horses and how it's that illusion of the waves looking like something else, right? Because Neptune is the god of the ocean.
Right. So there's the brothers. There's Hades or Pluto, and then there's Neptune, and then there's Jupiter. And so the brothers are they're the more powerful sources because their children are the demigods. But the illusions with them, the water represents emotion, so it's the illusions of the water. I've talked to, if you were to ask me my preference on how I would work, I would say that if I have to work a lot of hours as a psychic, if you put me under a full moon and you put me near the water, it's easier because I can take and pull up what people's illusions are so much easier because I have the benefit of the water and the moon supporting that process. So, it's like people have illusions, but people don't realize that they carry those illusions and live by them. And so if you sit and you talk with somebody and you help them to see them, it changes their reality.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be an illusion if they were aware of it. It wouldn't be.
Right.
They wouldn't know it was an illusion if they knew. Yeah, so.
Yeah, so those illusions are changed.
Right. So it does go direct on November 28th.
Okay, good.
So a lot of those planets go back to being direct in the fall.
Okay, good. That's really good news. Yeah, so all psychics, all people that work with energy work better near a large body of water. It doesn't matter if it's a stream or a lake or an ocean. It doesn't matter. And so that's just sort of a tool we use. People aren't even conscious that they're using that tool. They just say, well, I did some of my best work when I went down to a boat and did this reading for this woman. They're just not even, sometimes they're not even aware of it. I personally am aware of it just because I don't have to send out as much energy in order to receive a response. So there is part of that work that is resolved for you. But Katrina, you have been absolutely helpful. Can you wrap this up? You've got like 2 minutes to wrap this up with me.
Okay. I guess it's just, I'm trying to think of like how we tie it into your theme of grief. But it's just it's a sensitive retrograde. I guess the advantage is, choosing words and thoughts that feel good. Doing a lot of self-care, maybe just being aware of those thoughts, that self-talk tape that we all have inside of our head, maybe kind of paying attention to what that brings about in us, and maybe time to shift it.
So how does that tie in with grief, with what you're talking about? Well, anytime we go into a situation of where our emotions are focused and there's no more illusions. So, that does tie into grief. A lot of grief is often about guilt or feeling sorry for yourself, in my opinion, and I think there's a lot of true grief over the sadness over not having that person connected with us on the physical plane. But the other part of it is that by having this astrological aspect happen at this point in time, you are freed of some of the illusions that you've been carrying around emotionally. So it's a very good, very, very beneficial process at this moment.
Yeah, and Cancer is about home. The ruling planet is the moon, which is in a chart our emotions, right? So
yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. I also I'm looking at I like my Parker's astrology, and they have the associations of Cancer, and they have white flowers, lilies, and white roses. So it's just funny. I'm thinking, talking to you, we're talking about grief, and white lilies and white roses are always associated with a family member passing on. In my experience.
Right, absolutely. Okay. Well, Catherine, will you do this again for us next week? I'm gonna bring on Stephanie to talk.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you so much, darling. I love you.
Love you too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, let's see. I've got another person. Hey, Stephanie. I love you so much. And
thank you.
I love your mom so much, and
I know.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. I really am.
I know.
I know. So talk to me, and let's do some powerful work on this whole process with you. It's emotional. It's fragile. I just came home last night from my father's funeral. So
that's hard. That's very hard.
I'm in the same place as you are today. I'm in the same place. So.
Well, yes, although it's a little different because I've had my mother with me, and she passed away yesterday morning at 6:52.
Okay.
And I was blessed by sharing her last breath.
No, I'm so happy for you.
It was a very, we had gone to bed the night before. We sort of checked in on her. We knew she was close. We checked in on her over the course of the night. In the morning, I got up and her breath was extremely shallow. So I texted the family. I let them all know that we were very, very close. And I went in, got a drink of water, and I came back to stand with her. And I touched her shoulder, and she just one little, and that was the last. That breath kind of slowly escaped. It wasn't an exhale. It was just an inhale, and then the slow escape of breath. And it's because I've had such a long time to prepare. It's a very interesting feeling because I know that I am experiencing deep grief, but at the moment it doesn't feel. I don't feel heartbroken at all. I feel blessed, and I have an ache. I'm aching, but it's almost a shadow ache. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not. It's sort of like I can't explain it other than it feels a little bit like a shadow ache.
So, I came and saw your mom on Saturday.
I know.
Because it was really lovely. And I saw her crown chakra beginning to open and the white light coming in. So I knew it was a matter of, hours or days. It was right down to it because in the end, that crown chakra opens and then the light goes through the crown chakra. We come into life and we come into the first chakra. We go out of the life and we go into the crown chakra. So, and you see when you're with somebody and they're making this transition, you see them reminiscing in their mind about the thoughts and the conversations and the things in their life. It's a very there's only place for one person in that journey when they go through those stages, and each person does it. So, what a wonderful, loving, good daughter you are, and what a great gift you gave your mother to give her such dignity and such love and to be there. So, I think the way that a person you think you know what your sadness is about, but part of you wants to protect yourself. So, because you don't know if somebody's going to be loving and kind with you and support who you are, or if somebody's just going to throw a frisbee at you, which is a cliche saying. And so, thank you for laughing. So you sit in this position of being, really rather guarded, which, a lot of people don't really know the right thing to say when somebody passes. And it's like, I'm sorry for your loss. And it doesn't mean, it really means, that they acknowledge that you've had a loss.
Yeah.
So, and, I know how much your mother, loved you and how much you loved your mother. And, and I saw all the sacrifices that you made in order to make sure your mother was cared for. So, but it's still very complex because I'm sure in some ways, Stephanie, you're still really rather surprised by the sadness. And you call it a shadow of a feeling inside of yourself where you ache. But it is still the same grief process. It doesn't, that.
I totally get that. I think the surprise that I'm having is the fact that I am surprised that I've been given permission to have to be sheltered. I really feel like if I were really feeling everything that I could feel at this point, I would be doubled over, and yet I am not. I am calm. I really believe that it's more than a belief. I feel at my core that this was like the absolute perfect ending. This was the gift. This was, it was absolutely in divine order. So I know that and I feel that. And I also know that inside it's very odd to feel such blunted emotion. Because while she was alive, there were days that I sobbed all day knowing that I would lose her.
Right.
Knowing that the time, just even because of the dementia, sobbing all day because I missed my mom. I missed the woman that my mother had been. And I was absolutely, literally doubled over in grief over losing my best friend. And she was down the hall. She was right there with me. And I was devastated because the mom that I know and knew as my mom and my friend was no longer accessible to me.
Right.
So I've had experience of this incredible agony of loss. And in the last 7 days, because that's how long it took her from the time that she had she had like probably a mini stroke where she aspirated a little,
right.
And so it made it worse. And that was the beginning of the last decline.
Right.
And that was like it was 8 days from that time. And having the family in and having and she was actually pretty lucid, much more lucid than she's been in months.
Right.
Just being there, present, hearing what she had to say, and the gift of it. And it is a gift. People shy away, but it is a gift. But I'm surprised. I'm grateful. I'm actually surprised and grateful that I can have this conversation with you.
Oh, good. Really good. So people are uncomfortable with it because they're not familiar with it and they haven't seen it and it hasn't been integrated into their life. So the birth of a child is the birth of the spirit in the new body, and the death is the birth of the person into the spirit world. And they each have their own beauty. One
Yes.
feels like hope and the other one feels like loss. So often easier for us to stay connected with somebody in the spiritual world, ask for their guidance, ask for their wisdom. But it's very complex. It is not straightforward. It's very complex. So, you thought that you had the time and the space and all the preparation for everything, and there's a lot of acceptance. But I too am surprised by how much I'm saddened by the loss of your mom. I too am really surprised by that because we knew, we prepared, we talked about it, but the actual reality of it is still has its own pain.
Yeah.
So
it does.
So yeah. So if I can ask you to, where do you? I mean, I would think that you would feel it in your heart, but it's funny because when I tune into your heart, I feel it on the back of your heart. Your heart wants to be numb, doesn't want to really feel it. It wants to say that this is something I can make sense of, but you're still feeling it. It's on the back of your chakra, on the back of your heart chakra.
Actually, it's on both sides, but yes, it is in my heart chakra and a little bit around my third eye.
Okay.
So it's interesting because I thought, what don't I want to see?
Right.
But yes, you're right. The ache is in my chest and in the back, in my mid back.
Right.
Which is definitely both sides of the chakra. It's
right.
both. And
so Stephanie, I'm going to ask you
I feel what?
I'm going to ask you a really personal question, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If I could put you in power of anything at this moment, what would you choose to be in power of? Because once you accept your power, then you begin the process to heal. What would you like to be in power of?
That is a hard question. You always do this to me.
No. I love you enough. I love you enough.
You ask me the hard questions. What do I want to be in power of?
To see your full potential and to ask you to accept your full potential. I love you in a way that probably nobody else on the planet loves you. But yes, you. Go ahead.
What do I want to be in power of?
It's a good question, huh? It's the truth of the matter,
I think. I don't know if this is an answer in terms of power, but what I want, I think more, if I could do anything that I wanted to do, it would be to be fearless. In accepting, fearless in my search or my journey to really accept my gifts spiritually.
Okay, so can I condense and refine that comment for you?
Yeah, that'd be real helpful. You always do that. That's good.
Okay, good. So you're asking that the distorting influence of fear be removed so that you can truly embrace who you believe you are spiritually.
Yes.
So you kind of have an interesting piece of history, and I don't know if you're actually comfortable in talking about it, but your grandmother was actually directly taught by Madame Blavatsky, and I never can say that word correctly. I try.
Blavatsky.
So even though, you are not somebody who was raised in you were not actually somebody who practiced theosophy, but she is considered the grandmother of the metaphysical New Age movement. It was her thinking and the way that she started talking about spirituality that led to the next generation of, Emmett Fox and, a multitude of other people, Napoleon Hill, that then led to where the movement is today. So your lineage, your family history, your genetic memories go back to that point in time, which is a very interesting advantage in one way, and then in another way, it's a very different perspective. So a lot of your energy in your life has been about reconciling those pieces. And people are not perfect, right? People are not perfect. I mean,
no.
People manifest and practice parts of the New Age, New Thought, metaphysical movement, and other parts of their life they don't, which is completely their option. Not everybody is actually brave enough or fearless enough, as you say, to actually make an agreement to practice all parts of it. But I think that you do have an advantage that most people that are just, coming into it. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I meet that are, coming into this movement, and they're the first person in their family to come into it. They weren't raised in it or anything else. Okay? So.
Yeah.
Right? So, third eye is understanding, and of course the heart is love. So, really, really understanding the spiritual gifts that you've been given, that you were born with, and really, choosing to step. When we walk through fear, when you have fear, difficult situations where I'm fearful, I say to myself, it's only fear. You just go forward. And this is sort of a relentless, chanted sort of thing when I'm facing something that isn't comfortable for me, because fear is the distortion and the illusion, So fear doesn't mean you don't go forward. It can stop you from doing something, and then you become paralyzed. But in this situation, I think you have a really unique advantage, Stephanie. I think you really have an extremely unique understanding. And sometimes fear simply motivates you well enough to get up and change something.
That's a good point. I think in the last couple years, in the last couple years, I feel like I've reopened myself to my heritage.
Okay.
For a long time, I really didn't feel that I deserved, or I was mature enough, or I really wasn't willing to take the responsibility of managing the energy that I commanded.
Right.
That sounded weird, didn't it? But
no, that's
true.
It's interesting because by not accepting it, the power became not within your own hands, but sort of became part of your story. And so by claiming our power and claiming our gift and claiming our blessings, which I always think is such an interesting thing, because your karma, your story, has its own blessings. Other people may not ever have those same sort of blessings. And so just because a person has a blessing, it does not automatically mean that another person can have the same blessing. So the blessing that you got that for whatever reason, and that's part of your story. I don't have that same blessing that you do to inherit this knowledge at a genetic level. So once you're willing to really accept that, then the transformation begins. It's not like I have to be worthy, I have to prove myself, I have to be willing to suffer or martyr myself to it. No. This is your blessing, this is your gift, this is yours. You choose if you want to accept it or not. So remember the story that Napoleon Hill does, that every single person is born, has a choice of 3 gifts, and he explains to you how you write that out. So, yeah. Right. So this gift, now that you've gone through the transition with your mother, now this gift rests in your hands. You are the matriarch of your family lineage. You are the oldest female relative in your family. And so
that's another thing that hit me in the last few days is I'm now the matriarch.
You are. You are
it's
the matriarch.
Like, whoa, Jack. I mean, honestly, that's such a...
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's a great comment, Stephanie. Talk about that. Talk about how that hit you, how that understanding and that responsibility hit you. Talk about that.
I'm speechless. Honestly, it's this big, whoa. I feel like Bill and Ted. Whoa. I'm it. I am now the matriarch. And I feel incumbent upon me then to step into the position of wise woman. I am that. I have been that for a long time. But I refuse to be that. I refuse to accept my crone-ness, my wise woman position. And I pretended that isn't so. And with my mother's passing, it's been coming. It's not like I didn't do anything. I haven't been working on it. But with my mother's passing, I realized that it's like the mantle got passed to me.
Yes.
And it's really weird because this is a little side thing. I've always been told, first of all, my grandmother told my mother that I was going to be a herald of the age of Aquarius, that I was going to bring people into the age of Aquarius. And, my mom didn't know what that meant, and I certainly didn't know what that meant. And then in readings that I have received over the years, I have been told that in my 60s, I would come into my power. And that until then, I would be searching, which absolutely did not make me happy. Because I thought 60, your life was over. It's like, wait, till my 60s? I'll be dead. But I wasn't. I'm not.
No.
But what's interesting is in the last 8 days, which is also interesting, 8 and infinity, and it's not 9 days or 10 days, but anyway, in the last 8 days, that understanding of the mantle being passed to me and being the matriarch of this family, but I'm not just the matriarch of this family. I have a responsibility to be a holder of the light. I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to actually, what I'm supposed to do with the light yet, but I know that I'm supposed to do something with it. And that's the wake-up that I had, the aha.
So,
and it's very weird, I think.
Weird. Okay, HP, say Balatsky again. Say it again for me.
What last part should I say? The last thing?
Madame Blavatsky. Say it again for me. I never say it right.
Blavatsky.
So I picked up a book. It's called H.P. Blavatsky Returns. And it has a great comment in here, and it says, an educated person has a great curiosity about life, and a truly educated person expresses great joy in experiencing life and in learning. So the search and the desire for learning seems to me to be about your own personal curiosity. But there's a great benefit at this point in time when you go back and you read these little tiny books, because they did these short books in a series. and they're so much easier to assimilate than trying to sit down and read the giant, thick theosophy book.
Yeah.
So, and she was a medium and a great psychic, and she definitely did life very unconventionally. She really did. So it is really about taking you back to those memories that you have inside of yourself that you haven't activated because somebody has told you it wasn't your time, it wasn't your place, it wasn't your understanding of the world. Essentially, you're completely freed of so many of life's responsibilities at this time. It is the very first time in your life that you can really just say, I'm just doing it because I believe my own curiosity will lead me to something else. So it is a fortunate position. It is a blessed position. It is a spiritual connection for you. But it is also the first time that without constraint, you can completely go forward and pursue what you want to pursue. So first of all, I want to take and tell you thank you for coming forward and sharing your story and accepting a conversation with me, a reading about what's unfolding for you in your life with openness. This past chapter of time, you've been so focused on what you need to take care of, there hasn't been the opportunity for you to really, really listen and honor what it is that you wanted for yourself because you just had a lot of hard work. And so it's like you've survived that, and now you're actually free. So, it's a great blessing. I mean, I'm sure it still has pain attached to it, but it is a great blessing. And it's one that you get. Not everybody gets this blessing, Stephanie. It's really an awakened moment for you.
I feel that. I feel such gratitude and awe that this has happened, that it seemed to, and that's sort of why it's like, yes, I'm so sad to lose my mom. And on the other hand, I feel like so grateful and blessed and I it's such an experience to have grief mixed with joy, and relief and just all the feelings. I have all the feels. I'm feeling all the feels, and that too is awesome.
Well, yeah. I think you're honest about your emotional process. I think you're very honest about it. So, and it was a promise I made to you from the first point when I stepped up and, involved myself. And I said, and I will be with you all the way through to the end until the last day. So, and it's been a great thing in our friendship for me to be there with you on this. So, there's many people that are grateful for your experience today, Stephanie. Many people.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I truly appreciate that, and I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
You are a very, very, very dear and precious part of our lives. So I thank you for talking to me today too.
What an interesting release it is for you to do this conversation, and I'm so glad you agreed to do it while it was still so fresh, and we worked through over 100 years of your family history in this conversation. It's an amazing dialogue.
Actually, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, very quick. sometimes I'm kind of sneaky about how I do those little conversations with somebody, but you did it. You did the material. So you need to acknowledge yourself for being willing to do it, even while there was a risk attached to it.
Oh. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, my hour is up. Please say goodbye, Stephanie. And
goodbye. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Love you.
I love you. Goodbye. Okay, so you've been listening to a conversation. Suzanne Wyman, the deep reading connecting you to your soul. You can call me at 714-400-7384. Have a great day, and thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Become a Goldilocks Productions VIP patron.
Receive exclusive access to live stream special and other epic perks. Join the Goldilocks Productions VIP community today.